This happened 8 years ago. I was 27 and already had some experience under my belt. I went to Afghanistan as part of a military intelligence unit. Now, I was back as a security consultant. I had received unsettling reports about the outpost where I used to live. Communication from the small team stationed there had suddenly stopped. Honestly, I had never stopped thinking about it. When I got there, everything felt wrong. The rusted gates were swinging open, and the buildings looked worse than I remembered. Equipment lay scattered like forgotten memories. I felt a chill creep down my spine. I walked into the main building and noticed a screen flickering. I turned it on. It showed video footage of my former comrades. They looked different. Their eyes were wide, and there was something frantic in their movements. Suddenly, the video cut off. I tried to rewind it, but it wouldn't respond. I started to explore, my heart racing. I needed answers. I moved through the darkened hallways, glancing at the walls. I saw symbols etched into the metal and concrete. They seemed familiar, but also bizarre. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. As the sun began to set, I heard noises outside. They were faint, almost like whispers. I wondered if it was just the wind, but deep down, I felt a sense of dread. I spoke with a couple of the remaining team members. They talked about shadows flickering at the corners of their eyes and sounds echoing in the night. One soldier spoke about hallucinations, saying he thought he saw someone, or something, standing next to him. Each of them had fled in panic, but when I asked more questions, they started to shift. Their answers became confused, uncertain. I felt uneasy. Maybe they weren't telling me everything. It wasn't long before crew members began to disappear. I felt pressure in my chest each time I received a report that someone was missing. I knew I shouldn't be there, but something kept me pushing forward. I had to understand what was happening. I went back to the main building, seeking the comfort of familiarity. I swear I heard my name whispered, but when I turned, no one was there. I paused, my heart racing. I started to feel dizzy, like the world around me was bending. I needed to leave. Something bad was closing in. Then, without warning, I saw him, someone standing in the doorway of the main room. I blinked, but he was still there. He just stood and stared at me, his expression blank. I took a step forward and asked if he was okay. He didn't answer, just continued watching. My breath quickened. Suddenly, I turned around, feeling a rush of fear. The tension tightened around me. I swear I heard someone whisper, "He's not real." I don't know if my mind was playing tricks on me, but at that moment, I felt a chill grip my heart. I realized I might not be alone after all. I stumbled backward, my eyes darting around. The walls felt like they were closing in. A whisper echoed in my head, growing louder. "You shouldn't have come back." I turned, but the room was empty. I had to get out. Right then, I knew I was in deeper than I ever anticipated. I rushed out of the main building, my heart pounding in my chest. I needed fresh air, space to think. Outside, the cold night air felt sharp against my skin. I glanced around, half expecting to see that figure again. Silence enveloped the outpost, but it wasn't comforting. It was oppressive, like the world had paused, holding its breath. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The whispers were louder now, swirling around my mind. "You shouldn't have come back." I wanted to shout back, to scream at the voices, but I held it in. There was no one to respond, no one to hear me. I walked toward the perimeter, looking for answers. I couldn't process the earlier events. My training kicked in. I needed to revert to protocol. My gut told me to gather evidence, so I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of everything. The crumbling walls, the strange symbols, and the oil streaks on the ground that seemed to lead into the distance. Then I noticed it. A faint glow coming from one of the storage containers. I approached it cautiously, half expecting something to jump out at me. The door creaked open slowly. Inside, it was dark. Musty air hit me like a wave. I fumbled for my flashlight, the beam cutting through the shadows. What I found made my stomach drop. There were crates upon crates of supplies, but that wasn't the worst part. Scattered amongst them were personal items, photo frames, dog tags, clothing. It was all too familiar.
These items belonged to my crew, my friends. The realization hit me hard. They hadn't just disappeared. Something had taken them. That's when I saw it. A diary lay half open on a crate. I picked it up, my hands shaking. Flipping through the pages, I found frantic notations. We can't trust the shadows. They watch, always. Gary went missing during the night. Each line seemed to pulse with urgency, a warning from a mind unraveling under pressure. My hands trembled as I read the last page. If you find this, please leave. We were fools to stay. Something prickled at the back of my mind. Had I been drawn back here for a reason? Was this outpost some sort of trap? Just then, I heard a noise behind me, a low humming, like a distant engine. It sent a jolt through me. I turned, and in the shadows, just outside the container, I saw movement. My breath caught in my throat. A figure was tracking closer, its shape undulating strangely, like a mirage. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice echoing against the metal walls. The figure stopped, then tilted its head, as if studying me. I didn't wait for an answer. Panic surged. I bolted, darting back toward the main building. My legs felt heavy, like I was running in sand. As I reached the door, I looked back. The figure was gone, swallowed by the darkness, but I knew it was still there, lurking. Something was coming for me, and I didn't know how to escape. I slammed the door shut, my heart racing as I pressed my back against the cold metal. I had to figure this out, but before I could catch my breath, a new sound pierced the silence, a knock. Steady, persistent. Someone was at the door. I stood frozen, my heart hammering in my chest. The knock came again, louder this time, and my instinct screamed at me to run. But where could I go? The door felt like a thin barrier between life and whatever lurked in the dark. "Who is it?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. The last thing I wanted was to sound afraid, but the trembling in my knees betrayed me. There was no response, just that same rhythmic knock, as if it thrummed in time with my heartbeat. I took a cautious step toward the door, each movement feeling like it was in slow motion. I could hear the night outside, the wind whispering secrets through the cracks. The feeling of being watched crept over me again, a heavy blanket that suffocated my thoughts. "What do you want?" I shouted, desperate for an answer. My fingers grazed the cold metal handle, but a sudden chill froze me in place. The air felt thick, alive with tension, as if something was waiting for me to make the next move. Then I remembered the diary, the warnings etched in trembling handwriting. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to open the door. Just then, the knocking stopped, replaced by a silence that felt even more oppressive. I held my breath, straining to hear any sounds beyond the door. My mind raced with possibilities. Who or what was out there? The figure I saw earlier? My crew? Or something worse? I stumbled backward, my back against the wall as I pieced together what I had learned. The items in the storage container, the diary, they all pointed to a truth I wasn't ready to confront. I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was surrounded. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a voice from the other side of the door, low and gravelly. "Let me in. I can help you." The voice sounded familiar, but panic clouded my thoughts. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice stronger than I felt. "What do you want?" "Please, you need to trust me," the voice replied, urgency lacing its words. "They're coming. You don't have much time." I felt a rush of conflicting emotions, fear, confusion, and the faintest glimmer of hope. Could it really be someone from my past? Someone who might know what was happening? Or was this another trap? Before I could decide, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed outside, drawing closer. I saw shadows flickering at the edges of my vision. The knocking resumed, but now it was different, frantic. I needed to act. I inched closer to the door, heart racing. "If I open this, you better not hurt me," I warned, though my voice trembled. "Just trust me. Open the door." The footsteps grew louder, and with a burst of adrenaline, I grabbed the handle and pulled the door open, ready to face whoever stood on the other side.
But just as I did, a dark shape lunged past me, leaving me stunned. The figure, the strange, undulating form, swirled into the room, and I slammed the door behind it. Now trapped, we faced each other, uncertainty hanging like fog in the air. I was unsure if this was help or the beginning of my nightmare. The figure in front of me was a man, though his features were obscured in shadow. His clothes were tattered, and he looked disheveled, like he'd walked straight out of a nightmare. I backed away, my pulse racing. "What are you? Who are you?" "Calm down," he said, his voice low but surprisingly steady. "I'm here to help you." "Help me," I scoffed, fear twisting in my gut. "You've just burst into my room like a lunatic. How am I supposed to trust you?" "They're close," he whispered, casting a nervous glance at the door. "You really don't have much time. We need to move, now." My instincts screamed at me to run again, but something in his eyes held me there. There was a desperation there, one that seemed all too familiar. "You've seen them too?" he continued, lowering his voice. "What we encountered out there wasn't human. They're coming for you now." Encountered what? I was confused, but I couldn't ignore a gnawing feeling in my gut that he was telling the truth. I needed answers. He stepped closer, and I caught a glimpse of his face under the dim light. I felt my breath hitch. I knew him. "Nate, is that you?" "Yes, it's me," he replied, relief breaking through like a crack in the darkness. "I thought I was the only one left. I never thought you would—" His words trailed off, and his eyes darted back to the door. "Left? What are you talking about?" I pressed. "Nobody returned from that mission," Nate said, urgency creeping into his voice. "We thought you were taken. I should have come back for you." All the pieces crashed together in my mind. 8 years ago, a terrible mission in Afghanistan that went wrong. Strange happenings, missing crew members. It was all flooding back. I felt breathless. So this is connected to that? They want you for what you saw, what we all saw. He turned to the door, which seemed to pulse with a life of its own. "We can't stay." "Here, you'll understand everything soon, but we have to leave. They can't find you here." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the other side of the door, shaking the walls. My heart plummeted. What was that? "They're here," Nate yelled. "Get ready to run." Before I could respond, the door began to splinter as something relentless pounded at it from outside. My instincts kicked in, and I looked around for an escape route. But with the only exit collapsing, panic shot through me. That's when I saw it, a window, partially cracked open. I turned back to Nate, who was already looking at me with fierce determination. "We'll have to jump," he said. I swallowed hard, but nodded, adrenaline surging. Then everything went dark as the door gave way, crashing open. Shadows poured into the room, and I felt the chill wrap around me. There was no time left. "Now!" Nate shouted. I leapt towards the window, the world beyond it calling with terrifying urgency. An unknown fate awaited on the other side, and I had no choice but to take that leap. I hit the ground hard, rolling to absorb the impact. Pain shot through my shoulders, but I pushed myself to my feet. I turned around to see Nate barely behind me, his face pale but focused. The window frame had shattered, glass glinting in the moonlight like scattered stars. "Go," he rasped, looking back at the building that had just become a prison. The sound of splintering wood echoed in my ears, the shadows spilling out of the doorway. A wave of cold dread washed over me. We sprinted across the dark yard, breath coming in quick bursts. That sinking feeling, I would have given anything to shake it off, but it only deepened as I stole glances back. What had come through that door? I already knew I didn't want to find out. "Where are we going?" I called out, trying to drown out the sound of my thudding heart. "Follow me," Nate shouted back, weaving around a cluster of trees that lined the property. I could feel his urgency, but my mind raced ahead, churning with questions. We reached the edge of the woods that bordered my house. It was a dense thicket, something I normally avoided at night, but there was no choice now. "Nate, talk to me. What do you know?" He paused, eyes darting everywhere, scanning the shadows. "What we saw? It's worse than you think. They don't want us to remember, but you're different. You saw the truth." I drew a breath, trying to collect my thoughts. "What truth? I was just—"
"You were the only one who came back," he interrupted, frustration flaring in his voice. "Do you have any idea how many people are after you?" That statement chilled me. A sudden rustling made me freeze, and I looked back nervously. "You said you thought I was taken. What does that mean? Who is after me?" "I don't have time to—"
Explain. We need to keep moving. Nate grabbed my wrist and pulled me deeper into the woods. Trust me, I promise I'll tell you everything when it's safe. Just stay close. We plunged into the darkness of the trees, branches snagging at my clothes as I stumbled through the undergrowth. The night was eerily silent now, the sounds of our escape muffled by a thick tension in the air. Nate halted, his eyes narrowing as he listened intently. "They're coming. We have to find shelter." I strained to hear anything at all, but my heartbeat drowned out everything else. "What are we going to do?" "Just hold on," he said, urgency written across his features. "If we can reach the old cabin up ahead, it's our best chance." "Cabin?" I echoed, trying to conjure memories of a place I had only heard about from locals. "Yes," Nate whispered, "it's been abandoned for years, but it could buy us some time." As we moved, the feeling of being watched settled on me, a suffocating weight. I turned and caught a flicker of movement from the corner of my eyes. "Nate?" My voice trembled as I pointed behind us. Then I realized the shadows were shifting. I felt my pulse spike as the realization hit. Something wasn't just following us, it was closing in, and now there was nowhere left to run. I took a step back, eyes wide with dread. Nate's hand tightened around my wrist, yanking me toward him as we slipped behind a gnarly tree trunk. The shadows seemed to coil around us, thick and sinister. "It's too close," Nate breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. Just then, a howl split the air, raw and echoing. I flinched, my heart racing. The sound was primal enough to weave itself into my fears. I had heard of wolves howling in the distance, but this was different. It felt like something more, something human, yet not. "Keep moving," Nate urged, pulling me along. "We have to reach the cabin before they catch our scent." "Who?" I gasped as we dashed further into the woods, branches clawing at my skin. "Who's after us?" Nate shot me a look, a mix of urgency and fear. "You won't believe me. Just trust me, okay?" I nodded, still grappling with the enormity of everything he had said. The cabin was just a few steps ahead. I could see the outline of the ancient structure through the darkness. But the air felt heavier, as if something unseen was lurking nearby. Then, in a flash of panic, I caught movement once more. This time, it wasn't just shadows. Figures emerged, slipping in and out of view like smoke. "Nate, they're right there," I gasped, my chest tightening. "I know," he replied, urgency spilling into his voice. "Run!" Racing to the cabin, the wind rushed past me, mixing with the rising sounds of something chasing us. My legs felt like lead, each step weighed down by the terror that gripped me. We finally reached the beaten door of the cabin. Nate shoved it open, pulling me inside, just as the howl rang out again, closer this time. The cabin was dim, filled with the scent of damp wood and moss. I stumbled as I entered, Nate nearly dragging me to a corner where shadows merged into one another. "We need to barricade the door," he said, scanning the room. I could see his mind working, calculating risks and options. I darted my eyes around. "What if they find us?" "We just need a moment. I'll figure something out." But as he started searching the space, I saw something on the walls, symbols etched deep, illuminated only by the moonlight that slipped through the cracks. They looked familiar, like dreams I couldn't quite recall. "Wait," I called out, stepping closer. "I've seen these before." Nate's head snapped to me, eyes wide. "What do you mean?" "I don't know, but they feel like memories, but I can't remember." Before he could respond, there was a loud thud at a door, rattling it. My breath caught. "They're here! Hold on!" Nate shouted. The door buckled again, and I could hear whispers overlapping with growls, a chorus of something I couldn't grasp. Then everything went dark as the door splintered wide open. I hit the ground hard, the impact jarring my whole body. A small flare of light flickered back to life in the cabin. I blinked, disoriented, trying to make sense of the chaos unraveling before me. Nate was already lunging toward the door, pushing against it with a mix of determination and panic. The shadows spilled into the cabin, swirling like a living thing. I could barely make out the figures lurking just outside, their distorted faces leering at us. "Get back!" Nate shouted, shaking. "Get behind something!" I scrambled to my feet, flinging myself toward a nearby table. It was old and wooden, covered in dust and age. I dove beneath it, peeking out just in time to see Nate struggling to keep the door from fully opening. The growls were getting louder, sharper, almost taunting. A heavy silhouette pushed through the splintered doorway. It was tall, with eyes that glowed like embers. My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't thought I could get any more scared, but fear morphed into sheer terror as it stepped over the threshold. "Nate," I whispered, my voice trembling, "what is that?" "I told you to trust me," he yelled, gritting his teeth against the strain of keeping the door closed. "Stay down." Everything felt unreal. My mind raced back to whatever Nate had mentioned before, something supernatural, something following us. The details were blurry, overshadowed by the fear gripping me now. Just as the creature began to push its way through the threshold, Nate's determination faltered. He took a step back. "Wait," I shouted hurriedly. "There's something on the walls. The symbols. I think they mean something." "Now's not the time," he growled, but another thump at the door sent him stumbling back, collapsing against the table. I looked back at the markings. They pulsed with a faint light, almost desperate. "They know we're here. Maybe they can protect us?" "Protect us?" Nate scoffed, but even he sounded uncertain. "How?" Just then, the creature let out a bone-chilling snarl. It was in the room, all sinewy movement and wild eyes. It turned its attention toward me, and I felt a deep instinct to run, to hide. "No!" I yelled. "Just give me a minute." I stood up, throwing caution aside. I raced to the wall, fingers tracing the shadows of the symbols as I chanted the sounds my mind barely recognized. They flowed from my mouth, strange and clumsy. Nate's eyes widened in disbelief. "What are you doing?" But I didn't answer him. I felt the air shift around me. The shadows twisted as if responding, wrapping around me in a protective cocoon. The creature paused. It was confused, hesitant. Then the floor cracked beneath it as if shaken by thunder. The creature roared, but the sound was even less certain now. Just as it lunged forward, something pulled my attention to one corner of the cabin. A hidden trapdoor, barely visible in the darkness. Without thinking, I pointed. "There, we have to go." Before Nate could protest, I sprinted toward the trapdoor. My heart hammered in my chest as the creature made another attempt to close the distance between us. "Come on," I shouted, urgency clawing at my throat. Nate hesitated only a moment before he shot forward. Seconds felt like hours as I grabbed the door handle. With a deep breath, I yanked it open, revealing a dark abyss below. We didn't have much time. I glanced back as the creature lunged, and for that brief moment, I understood. It was not just hunting us. It was looking for something else entirely. "Jump!" I yelled, pushing Nate down the stairs before following him into the darkness. As the trapdoor slammed shut above us, I realized we were far from safe, and something else lurked in the shadows below. I landed hard on the bottom step, the air knocked out of my lungs. Darkness surrounded us, thick and suffocating. Panic clawed at my chest. I blinked, trying to adjust to the shadows. "Nate?" I called out, my voice echoing in the stillness. I could barely make out his silhouette, crouching near the wall, wide eyes reflecting the faint light from the trapdoor. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, just give me a second." His voice was shaky, and I could hear him breathing heavily. I shivered. The air down here felt colder, almost unnatural. Just when I thought we'd escaped one nightmare, another uncertainty loomed. Were we safe, or had we just traded one danger for another? As I fumbled to navigate the darkness, I spotted shapes emerging from the gloom. Boxes and old furniture piled high, abandoned like forgotten memories. This place used to be a storage room. "Nate, turn on your flashlight," I urged, feeling my way to him.
"Right," he replied, and soon a beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating our surroundings. I squinted, trying to suppress the mounting dread as the light danced over the walls. They were lined with more of those strange symbols, the same ones that pulsed in the cabin. But these were different, older, worn, and chipped. "What do you think it all means?" Nate asked, brushing dust off a nearby crate. I shook my head. "I don't know, but we need to figure it out fast." Just then, a low growl echoed through the room, stopping both of us in our tracks. The source was unseen, but the sound made my skin crawl. I couldn't shake the feeling we weren't alone. "What was that?" Nate whispered, his voice strained with fear. "I wish I knew," I muttered, my heart racing again. I moved closer to the wall, tracing the symbols with my fingers. Maybe these can help us? Suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled, sending a small cloud of dust spiraling into the air. I stumbled back, wide-eyed. Was it the creature? Had it followed us down here? "Nate, we have to go," I shouted, but as I turned, I froze. Directly behind us, a door creaked open, revealing a narrow passageway leading deeper into the earth. "A way out?" Nate suggested. But I noticed the flickering shadows dancing on the walls. It felt wrong, inviting in an eerie way. Then everything went dark. The flashlight flickered, the beam just a memory in the engulfing black. "Nate," I cried, fear creeping into my voice. "What happened?" "I don't know. Hold on." The beam flickered back to life, but the shadows were heavier now. "Should we go through?" I pointed at the passageway. Before he could answer, the growl returned, louder this time, echoing through the tunnel, each note vibrating with menace. "Something is coming," Nate said, his breath quickening. "We can't stay here." Just as we turned toward the door, I spotted something shiny, half buried in the dirt. The glint of metal. I couldn't resist. I crouched down to inspect it, and my heart dropped. It was a dog tag, old and tarnished, with a name etched into the surface. The moment I read it, I felt a chill run through me, a connection to something lost. Before I could process the significance, a shadow loomed behind us, the growling intensifying. "Nate!" I shouted, my voice a mixture of urgency and terror. "Run!" We tore down the passageway, plunging into the unknown, adrenaline propelling us forward. Whatever was chasing us was closer now, and we had to escape. But the deeper we went, the more questions loomed ahead of us, questions I was terrified to answer. The hallway stretched out before us, long and narrow, shrouded in darkness. I could hear Nate's breaths beside me, rapid and shallow. Whatever was behind us was closing in. We pushed forward. As the passage twisted and turned, I focused on the faint light ahead. It flickered like a distant star, promising escape. But my mind raced with thoughts of the dog tag. Who did it belong to? And what did it have to do with the growl that pursued us? "Keep moving," I urged Nate. His hesitation felt like an anchor. The growling shifted, becoming more like a chorus of snarls, each sound blending into the next. It unnerved me, and my legs felt heavy. I glanced back. The shadows were alive now, swirling and undulating, like the air had thickened. "Nate, please!" I cried out. I could feel panic rising like bile. Just then, the floor dipped beneath us. I stumbled, grabbing onto the wall for support. "What is this place?" I gasped, scanning the space for any clue. My flashlight flickered again, and I caught sight of something on the floor. A skeleton key, shimmering in the light. I picked it up, heart racing. "Maybe this will open something," I breathed, hope flickering inside me. "We don't have time for that," Nate yelled, his face a mask of urgency. "We need to find a way out before." The growling intensified, now accompanied by hurried footsteps. I felt an icy sweat break out on my forehead. No more hesitation. We had to keep going. We turned another corner and stopped short. The passageway opened up into a vast underground chamber, dimly lit with strange greenish light. My stomach dropped at the sight. In the center stood a metal table, and scattered around it were various items, launched like discarded toys.
a rusty rifle, torn clothing, and I squinted, stepping closer. On the wall behind the table, I saw the same symbols that lined the storage room. But beneath them, someone had scrawled something in desperation. "It watches you." "What does that mean?" Nate asked, a tremor in his voice. Before I could respond, the growl morphed into a roar. A shape lurked at the edge of the chamber, tall and shadowy, illuminated briefly by the greenish glow. "We need to go, now!" I shouted, clutching the key tightly. We rushed back into the passageway, but as we turned to escape, I spotted a door on the far side of the chamber. With little time to think, I sprinted toward it, dragging Nate along. The door looked older than anything else down here, its wood rough and worn. The lock was rusted, but the key felt heavy in my palm. As I reached for the lock, the growling echoed behind us, a warning that we were out of time. "Nate, cover me!" I cried as I fumbled with the key. I could feel him pressing close, the fear draped over us like a heavy cloak. Behind us, the creature was gaining. I inserted the key and twisted. It clicked. I pushed the door open, just as something lunged at us. We dove through the doorway and slammed it shut.
Heartbeats roaring in my ears. In the quiet that followed, I turned to Nate, breathless. What is going on here? He shook his head, the shadows creeping back as we found ourselves in another dark corridor. That blackness felt like it would swallow us whole. Somehow, this place was getting worse. But before I could say anything more, that growling returned, now low and mocking from the other side of the door. The creature was trying to get through. The weight of our situation settled in. We'd crossed a line we could never uncross, and whatever was chasing us was only getting started. I pushed myself to my feet, the ache in my body barely registering as looming dread eclipsed every thought. A shallow breath escaped my lips. "We have to keep moving," I whispered urgently to Nate, who was still catching his breath beside me. Nate nodded, his eyes glazed with fear, but ignited with purpose. "There's no telling how long that door will hold. We need to find an exit." We plunged into the darkness, the corridor stretching endlessly, shadowy shapes lurking just out of sight. The residual growls reverberated through the walls, a constant reminder that we were being hunted, and I wondered if we had unknowingly sealed our own fate by escaping into the unknown. I could feel the chill of despair creeping in, but we pressed on. As we stepped carefully through the minefield of dust and forgotten debris, I peered into the darkness ahead. A faint light flickered in the distance, and for a heartbeat, hope surged within me. "That way," I pointed, urging Nate forward. As we reached the light, I realized it was emanating from an open door at the end of the corridor. Relief mingled with hesitation as I stepped closer. "What if it's a trap?" Nate muttered, standing just behind me. "Let's take the chance," I urged, the thought of lurking shadows behind us too horrible to bear. I glanced back. The growls had grown louder, almost like a roar now. We exchanged a wary look and rushed toward the door. Adrenaline spurred us forward. I pushed the door open, and the light spilled out into the corridor, illuminating our escape route. My heart raced as I stepped through. Inside, the room was a bizarre juxtaposition of sterile white and eerie shadows. It felt both familiar and foreign, a stark contrast to the despair we'd just fled. The walls were lined with screens and blinking lights, like a command center that had been abandoned mid-use. I could feel Nate hovering close behind me, his breath heavy with apprehension. "Is this another trap?" he whispered, glancing around. "Maybe," I replied, frowning. But something about the screens captivated my attention. Flashes of images, faces of my team, interspersed with the very symbols we'd encountered. I stepped closer, heart racing. "Look at this," I gestured to the nearest screen, which flickered to life as I approached. A montage of scattered memories engulfed me. My crew, the mission, fragments of laughter fading into chaos. The last image was jarring. It showed me, standing frozen in that desolate room in Afghanistan, just before everything had gone dark. This "This can't be real," Nate stammered, eyes wide. "But it is," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "This is what happened." A sudden clap of thunder echoed outside, shaking the room. Our moment of revelation splintered under the pressure of reality, the growls outside morphing into frenzied scratches at the door. It was clear. Whatever was after us was still coming, a relentless force we couldn't escape. Panic surged within me. "We need to leave! That thing!" I gestured back toward the corridor. "Wait!" Nate interjected, pointing to a blinking red light on a nearby screen. "That's an exit! We have to activate it!" Before I could protest, before I could think, I dashed across the room, Nate right behind me. The screen was covered in layers of dust, but as I tapped it, the red light blared even brighter, and an unexpected whirring filled the air. "Come on," I urged, adrenaline pounding through my veins. Just as the whirring died down and a door opened to our right, the walls trembled with the sound of something monstrous crashing against the outer door. It was close now. "Go! Go!" Nate shouted, pushing me forward as the exit door opened into blinding light. We barreled through, grappling with each other as we stumbled into what felt like freedom. The bright day outside contrasted sharply with the suffocating darkness behind us. We erupted onto a desolate expanse, the world bathed in sunlight. But there was no time to relish our escape. The growls had turned into shrieks, resonating like winds of torment. I turned, but the corridor behind us was gone. "What just happened?" I gasped, scanning the strange landscape. The outpost lay crumbled, collapsed under the weight of what had pursued us, yet it felt almost untouched by time. Nate stood beside me, shadowed by uncertainty. "We might have escaped," he murmured, "but I don't think we left everything behind." We caught sight of a figure in the distance, one that sent a jolt of fear through me, a specter tethered by the memories of those who hadn't escaped. My heart sank. It was one of my teammates, or at least a reflection of him, a part of my past begging for acknowledgement. "What does it want?" I whispered. "I don't know," Nate replied, swallowing hard. "But they're all tied together. It never let go of us." Before I could respond, the air shimmered, and I could feel a pull. The weight of questions left unanswered surged inside. The shadows were still there, lurking at the edges of my mind, leading me toward a past I wasn't sure I was ready to confront. Together, we stood there, fractured memories swirling around us, unresolved. I didn't have clear answers about what was chasing me, or whether it was a consequence of our mission. But one thing was certain. What we had seen would haunt us, leaving aching uncertainty in its wake. Ultimately, as the remnants of our past flickered in the sunlight, I realized the truth. Sometimes, escape doesn't mean freedom. It means carrying every burden forward, forever entwined in the shadows.